this is Tanya with Flying Dog Studio. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to draw a portrait using a grid. Now, this is one of the methods that I use to teach my students online how to draw portraits, and my plan for this is to show you how to get started by using a grid, and then I'm going to have a series of portraits where I start from the contour lines, which is what we're using the grid for. We're going to learn how to do contour lines, and then the next step will be the shading, and some of the pieces I do, we will even do color together. So if you are a traditional artist, you can do this with us. And if you are a digital artist, whether you use Procreate or some other drawing app, this should work for you. You may have a different method that you'll be doing this, but it all works out the same. So the reason for using a grid when we're doing a portrait is to allow us to break it down into pieces. Anything that seems overwhelming, and for some people, they think of doing a portrait and they say, oh, I can't do a portrait, that's so hard, I can't draw people. You can draw people. Don't think of it as drawing a person. If you break it down into smaller pieces, bite-sized pieces, it's easier to digest. So that's true with anything in life. So don't just jump in and start drawing. Some people do that, but if you're wanting to learn to draw and you're wanting to improve your contour drawing, this is the best way to do it. Now, a contour drawing is basically a line drawing. Contour is anything that the tip of your stylus or your pencil can touch when you look at a piece. So think of it as like tracing. If you trace something, you're drawing around the outside edges. There are contour lines inside the piece as well. So you can have contour lines for the nose, the eyes, the eyelashes, the eyebrows. Hair has contour of its own. Shadows have contours. And you're going to see in the video that accompanies this, our first piece, that there will be lines on the face that I draw and lines on the clothes that I draw, and those are for shadows. I like to outline my shadows. I think of it as kind of a roadmap. So you want to kind of get those lines on your piece so you'll know where to come back in and put the shading later. And sometimes I do that for color, but on this piece I think we're going to do black and white, and I'll show you the piece in just a minute. I already have her started. Oh, it is a girl, and it is from a movie that just came out when this piece is being filmed. So I'll show you that, and like I said, I'm going to have that ever so often. I'm going to do one of those pieces, and a lot of my pieces lately, my time lapse, you'll see they have the grid on there, and that's for anyone that wants to follow along. So if you are doing this traditionally, I'm about to tell you what you need, and if you're doing it digitally, I'm going to tell you how to set up your canvas. So for those of you that are digital, we're going to go into our canvas, and for Procreate, you hit that little wrench button. You come down to the drawing, oh, I'm sorry, not that yet, canvas information. This is like my 5th time to film this, and I've decided I'm going to finish this filming even if I mess up 2 million times. The last one I did, I drew the lines all in the wrong places, and I actually had to start that one over. But this one, we're going to finish, my people. All right, so canvas information, and I'm going to go into dimensions. So if you are doing this digitally, you're going to want a 2400 by 3000 pixel, and we're doing a 300 DPI. Now that is important. If you are doing this traditionally, that is basically an 8 by 10 canvas, and DPI means nothing to you. You are blessed on that one. So if you're doing it digitally, grab yourself an 8 by 10 piece of paper, a pencil, and a ruler. Or if you have a T-square, that's even better. If you don't have a T-square, if you have some popsicles in your freezer, go grab a popsicle and eat it. And make sure your stick is clean, and get a hot glue gun and glue that popsicle stick to the end of your ruler and make a T-square. I had to do that for a class when I first started teaching, and that was the easiest and cheapest way to do it for a bunch of kids, was to just take a plastic ruler and glue a popsicle stick to the end, and boom, you have an instant T-square, but it works. So you just need something to draw a straight line across your paper. You're going to need that. So 300 DPI, for those of you that are doing digital, that is very important because that is the best print quality that we can get on here. And if you're wanting to put it on your wall, that's what you're going to want is 300 DPI. If this is for print, like in a book or magazine, you're going to want a 300 DPI. DPI stands for dots per inch. So that tells the printer exactly how to print this piece and to put 300 ink dots per inch. So that's a lot of dots per inch. Now, if you're going to print it, you can only print it up to an 8 by 10 on this particular piece. However large you want your maximum print to be, that's how you're going to need to set it up. So if I wanted a 16 by 20, I would put 16 by 20. I can't print this as a 16 by 20 because it's going to mess up the print quality. It's going to take those 300 dots and it's going to spread them out and everything's going to be fuzzy. So you're going to want to print no larger than an 8 by 10 if you print this piece. If you want a 16 by 20, just put this 16 by 20. It's going to work for you. But we're going to do an 8 by 10. So I'm going to hit done. And now if you are doing, again, if you're doing this in Procreate, you're going to come into the wrench. Now we're going to hit drawing guide and have all these little boxes. You're like, great, my grid's already there. Not exactly. We're using this as a guide, because we are going to want this to stay, our picture to stay underneath our grid, and we're going to want to be able to adjust it. And so we're going to draw the grid on top of this. Now, mine's already set up, but I'm going to show you how to set this up, because it could be that your boxes are big. It could be that they're small. You can see how these evenly line up all the way around. It wasn't that way when I pulled it up. It doesn't always work that way. So you can come into Edit Drawing Guide, and right down at the bottom, it says Grid Size. You can move this little slide, or what I found the best way is to click this little inch thing right here. Make sure it's in inches. And I have this set up for a 0.25. And you saw, you can go smaller, you can go larger, but 0.25 is what we need, and that is perfect. I'm gonna hit done. There we go. Now I've cheated, because like I said, I've done this like 5 times, and I want to make sure that I get all the lines right. So our grid, these are our first lines. So if you are doing this traditionally, basically what we're doing is we are cutting this in half. So you're going to find the 4-inch mark and the 5-inch mark, and you're going to draw a grid, but make certain you do it super lightly. I tell my little kids, my baby students, I tell them, pretend you're drawing on a cloud with a feather. That's how light I want you to draw for this, because you guys are going to erase this grid. We're going to erase our grid as well, but for us it's simply toggling a layer on and off or deleting it. So if you are doing it digitally, we're going to draw these lines. Whoops, sorry about that. We're going to draw these lines down. Now, one thing I will say, if you are doing this in another program, I think it's Sketchbook. It used to be called Autodesk Sketchbook, but I think it's just Sketchbook now. I think you might have rulers that you can toggle on and off, or maybe a ruler that you can drag around. I know Photoshop has rulers, and you can mark this area and then draw a straight line. And if you, and it's kind of, I can't remember exactly how you draw a straight line and snap it into place in Photoshop. It's been a while since I've been on Photoshop, at least over a year. But there is a way to do that. You can Google that. It's what Google's for. It's what YouTube's for. That's why you're here. Okay, and if you are doing it like in Sketchbook, I think there's a ruler you can actually move around. So that's good. Whatever your program is, you'll have a way that you can do this. Now, if you're doing this in Procreate, you can actually draw, sorry about that, you can actually draw a line down and just hold it, and it snaps into place as a straight line. So you can do that. Okay, if you are in Procreate or some other drawing app, what I like to choose is an inking brush. And for Procreate, I use a technical pen. You just want to make certain that it's not too thick and it's not too thin. It's like Baby Bear. It's just right. And I'm using black ink. You can use whatever color ink you want. If you're going to be drawing, and we're going to be drawing with pencil, that's what I do like to draw with. I like to draw in the sketching pencils. I like to use the Derwent. So if you have some other pencil in your app that you want to draw with, that's fine. And if you're doing it traditionally, whatever pencil you're comfortable working with. If you want a 2H, an HB, a 4B, a 4H, just remember not to bear down hard. It really doesn't matter. It's entirely up to you. So now that we have the grid here, we're going to divide it again. Let me just get that out of here. We're going to divide that again, divide it in half, go into these sections, and now we have 8 blocks. And we're going to keep doing that. And that's what's beautiful about this. You can just count this out and it works out perfectly for you to do 10 blocks here, 10 blocks here, 10 blocks here. It's awesome. All right, now we're going to turn on layer 3 for you. And you don't have to do yours all in separate layers because you see I have one named grid. I just thought this would be easier so that I didn't mess things up and have to do this a 6th time. So as you can see, I divided it in half again. And now we have 4 this way, 4 going down this way. So we have 16 blocks. And I'm going to divide those again. Divided everything in half. You can see we have more blocks, and I'll show you again which one that is. So I divided it across this way, and then one more time. So we're going to end up with 8 blocks going across and 8 blocks coming down. So basically, if you are doing this traditionally, you are going to keep halving everything and dividing it until you get 64 blocks on this piece of paper. And that's important that we're starting with that many blocks because, again, it's going to help us to break this down into smaller pieces. So for my digital art people, I'm just going to bring this together. You will have one layer that says grid. So what I want you to do is to turn that down. I'm going to turn that down a little bit. And then I'm going to slide it over and lock the layer. That's important because there's nothing worse than drawing on the wrong layer for 30 minutes and realizing what you've done and have to back it all out. For me, that generally happens at midnight when I'm working on a deadline, but don't do that. Lock your layers. That's what I tell my students, lock your layers. Now we're going to come in here and we are going to turn that drawing layer off. And there you go. That's the grid. So that's how we get started with a grid. I am going to be doing, as I think I mentioned in this one, like I said, I've done this 6 times and I'm actually going to have to edit this video, but I am going to have projects that I'm working on that you can do with me, whether you are traditional or digital. And I'm going to have this grid, I'm going to download it to my blog as a PNG. So if you don't want to do the grid each time, you can just download my grid and add it as your grid layer on your canvas. And then I'm also going to have the reference piece without a grid. And then I'm going to have the reference piece with a grid. So you can download those straight to your device. And you can print them. If you are doing it traditionally, you're going to want that reference piece with the grid already on it so it will match what you have drawn on your paper. For the rest of us, we are going to be using the reference right here. I'll show you that in our next video. And I will give you a hint, the piece that we are doing, I'll just go ahead and show you. The piece that we are doing for the first video in my series. And if you're watching this, hopefully I have done many more, so you can pick the one that you want to do. But the first one that we're doing with this to learn how to do contour drawings is going to be Gamora from Guardians of the Galaxy. I hope you'll join me for that one. Now, if you have any questions about how I did this, please do not hesitate to leave a message in the comments below. And below in the description, I am going to put a link to my blog so that you can take a look at some of my posts on there, and you can find this reference piece on there, along with, hopefully, like I said, if you're watching this later, hopefully I have already done quite a few, but this is the first piece on there. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next video.